guys, it is me, Laura. I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 kids, ages 12, 9, and 5, and today I am going to share with you my 5-star reads from 2022. Most of these are kids' books. Some of them are books that we have used in our homeschool. Some of them are ones I've read with my kids. Some of them are adult books that I've read on my own. It's kind of a mismatch of all kinds of things. And just to give you a background, this year I reached my goal, yay, and I completed 100 books. There's 2 books that I'm reading right now that I won't be able to finish before the new year. And there were 65 books that I started but didn't finish. Some of those I read a few pages and didn't finish them. Others I almost made it to the end, but for whatever reason decided not to finish the book. If I'm going to rate a book 2 stars or 1 star, I just don't even finish it. So out of all of those books that I read this year, I have 18 5-star books. So some of you might think that that is extravagant with my 5 stars, and some of you might feel it's a little bit stingy, but at any rate, this is what I ended up with. So I am sharing them with you in the order that I read them this year. So the first one I have, this was actually a reread for me this year, Explorer Academy, Nebula Secret. I read this one myself a year or 2 ago, and I really enjoyed it, and it has a lot of science, a lot of tech, a lot of futuristic kind of inventions and things. It is a sci-fi, but it's not like high sci-fi. It's more of like a milder sci-fi. But I really wanted to share this with my oldest and read it with him because I thought he would really enjoy it, and I thought it would be a fun experience for him. So this year we actually read the entire series together. They came out with the last book just a few months ago, and this is such a good series, but this book is probably my favorite one from the series. And it even ended up we had an opportunity to go on a family trip, and we were trying to decide where to go. The main character in this book is Cruz, and he is from Kauai, Hawaii. So that is where our trip went. So we were able to listen to the audiobooks again while we were there, which is really fun. But Cruz is able to go to Explorer Academy, which is an elite school with children from all over the world. They learn about conservation. Basically, this is a National Geographic book. So all the things that National Geographic is a part of, science and conservation and history and all of those things, those are the things that these explorers are learning. They travel around the world. There are lots of just neat technology and gadgets. But the thing is Cruz is special. His mom used to work for the academy, but was killed in a fire. And she was killed for discovering medicine that could cure almost anything. So the pharmaceutical company is after her, and Cruz is given a mission to find this recipe, but the pharmaceutical company doesn't want him to find it, so they're after him, and it's this quest around the world to find all of the pieces to this recipe so that he can have it and recreate it. And the series, you're not going to just want to read one, you're going to want to read the whole series, but this one is really good. So the next one I have, some of these I have on paper. The paper ones I either listened to the audiobook and have that, or I checked it out from the library, or for whatever reason I don't have a physical book. But this is book 3 in the Mysterious Benedict Society. This is The Prisoner's Dilemma. I really enjoy these books. We watched the series, we started to watch the TV series on Disney Plus, but it's nothing like the books, and we just fell in love with the book so much that we did not finish watching the series because we didn't like it as much. But not all of the books are as good as the others. This is book 3 in the series. This one was super duper good, and I can't really say a whole lot about it because it's in the middle of a series and I don't want to ruin the rest of them for you. This is a great kind of mystery, kind of kooky, kind of suspenseful story, but it's not too much, and it's really fun and really just a super enjoyable read. So if you've not heard of the Mysterious Benedict Society, I highly recommend it. There's lots of problem solving and puzzles and adventure and escaping, and anyway, it's really a good series that I highly recommend. So the next one is very different. This is A Chance in the World. This is by Steve Pemberton. I read the Young Readers edition, and this is a true story about Steve Pemberton and his childhood, and he was raised in foster care in not such a good situation. And this is his story of how he survived through that and how he was able to get out, and the people who helped him along the way, and just his whole story. And I found it to be really inspiring, and I felt like for any child who is going through a rough experience, this is a great book to read. And for kids to read in general. There's lots of great questions, discussion questions at the end that you can discuss to help children understand what it might be like for some kids, or what to do if they meet somebody who is in an abusive home or a tough situation. So this one is really good. I highly recommend it. It also talks about his faith. He is a Christian, so if you are a Christian and want some inspiration, that might be encouraging to you as well. This was another really good one. This one, A Boy in the Back of the Class, we used this as a read aloud for our unit on immigration. And this one is such a sweet story about a boy who shows up in the main character's class one day, and they're trying to discover who he is, where he came from, what his background is, but he doesn't talk much. They don't know much about him. He isn't always with the class because he goes to do some other things, but he is a refugee from Syria. And I don't want to give too much away, but these kids try to befriend him and try to help him feel comfortable and try to help him get reunited with his family. And it is just a sweet, sweet story and a really good way to talk about immigration. This is just a really sweet book, and I highly recommend this one. This one is an old one. I got it from Thrift Books, so it's an old library copy, but this is A Letter to Mrs. Roosevelt. And this one is a short one. It is a quick read. It's good for younger kids too. It's a great read aloud if your kids don't have necessarily a long attention span. The chapters are pretty short, but this is about, is set during the Great Depression, and this is about a girl whose family is losing their house because of the Great Depression, everything going with that. She has an assignment in class to write a letter, so she writes one to Mrs. Roosevelt, and it's such a good way to capture what went on during that time, what life was like for people. It's loosely based on a true story, so that makes it interesting as well, and it's just a really sweet, really, really good read for that time period for sure. This one is also set during the Great Depression. This is Someplace to Call Home. This was our family read aloud for the Great Depression unit study. Oh, you guys, I love this book. This book makes me cry every single time I read it. It is about a family of 3 children who are orphaned, and they are traveling from Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl in the Great Depression, trying to find a place to stay. Their car breaks down, and they end up in this community, and they are trying to see if they can make it home, make this place home. And it's all about what is home, what is community. There are twists and turns in this story, such great character development, such great plot. There's Benny, who is their little brother who has Down syndrome. Hallie is the girl, and the story is told from her perspective, and Tom is the older brother who is trying to work and get money and keep the family together, and they befriend a family, and it's just, you guys, this is so good. So good, and really all about community. The next one is A Night Divided by Jinnifer A. Nielsen. You will see more by her. I have absolutely fallen in love with her as an author, and we've read a lot of her books this year. I hope to read even more next year. She has one coming out in 2023 about the Titanic. I pre-ordered it. I am so going to read it, but this is about the Berlin Wall, and this is about a girl whose family is divided the night that the wall goes up, and it is their whole story and whole experience through this time period. We will be reading this year when we are doing our Cold War unit, because this is definitely a part of that. And this is so well written. There's so much depth to it, and it just will keep you on the edge of your seat. And I absolutely loved this book. I look forward to sharing it with my kids, and I can't wait to see what they think of it too. The next one is War Horse. This is what we read as our read aloud for our World War I unit, and it follows the horse, Joey, from his farm with his boy, Albert. I couldn't remember his name, so many names to remember, and he ends up getting sold to the army to be a war horse in World War I. And of course, in World War I, it was hugely different because they went from horse and cart to using these tanks, and just a huge amount of transition during that war. So this follows him on his journey. It's told from the horse's perspective, and it is really, really gripping and really good. It's not a super long read. I would not recommend this for super young listeners because it can get pretty intense, but it is so, it was just such a neat way to explore this war that didn't make sense to so many people, and that so many people lost their lives. And if you have older kids as well, there is a movie that was made out of this book that you can watch together as a family as well. The next one is a very different genre. This is Honestly Elliott. We did this as a read aloud for our kitchen chemistry unit. So we did a bunch of chemistry stuff. We did a bunch of cooking with chemistry. This is about a boy named Elliott who has ADHD, which one of my kids has ADHD, and he's very much connected to this character. And he is trying to navigate his way and figure out, he loves to cook. He has all these thoughts and feelings about cooking, and he ends up put on a team with a girl at school who's very particular, very precise, very keeps things all in order, and together they are trying to sell something for their big school fair, and they're going to be making pies together. She also has celiac, so she cannot come in contact with gluten. So it's very interesting to see their dynamic together. His dynamic as his father and his stepmother are expecting a baby, and he's trying to grapple with that and build his relationship better with his father, and just there's so much good stuff in this book. This is a really fun read. We really enjoyed it, and yeah, another 5-star here. This is book 2 in a duology. I believe that's what they're called. This is The War I Finally Won. The first book is The War That Saved My Life. I actually read them both back to back, and I thought this one was better than the first one. I know that's not normally popular, but it's hard to say a whole lot about this without giving too much away from the first book. But the first book is the story of the little girl, and I cannot remember her name. She has a club foot, and her mother is very abusive, and her brother are sent away during World War II to be away from the bombings and the raids. And the person that they are sent to live with is a single old lady who's a little bit crotchety, but for her, it was the war that saved her life, because quite literally getting away from her mother saved her life. And so it's all about this experience of going through the war and adapting through it. Book 2 takes place still during World War II. Spoiler alert, if you haven't read the first one, stop this right now, because I'm going to ruin that story. But this is her settling in her new life as her mother has died, and she's now adopted by the person who's taking care of her, and all the things that she has to overcome from her trauma. So super, super good. All right, this one is another one that we are going to be using for a read aloud. We're about to do a World War II unit, and this is going to be our family read aloud. This takes place during World War II, but it is on the home front. So this is set in the US, so it's very different from a lot of World War II books. This is just really a story about bravery, what it means to be brave, what it means to be a hero. Not necessarily being a hero in a big, flashy sort of way, but what it means to be an everyday hero. And this is just a really, really good one. I cannot wait to read it with my kids to see what they think of it, but this is another one I highly recommend. This one, Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepeteys, was recommended to me by Arlene at Arlene & Company. I will drop her links and information below. This takes place in East Prussia in 1945, so it is during World War II, and it is all these characters. You are hearing from them from all different perspectives, all different sides and places and from the war, just all these different perspectives, which I love, and it culminates in one of the biggest ship sinkings that has ever happened, and one that not many people know about. And so this one will make you cry for sure. This is a YA book, definitely not a kids book, pretty intense, but really, really, really good. And I always love hearing stories that we don't hear a lot, or parts of stories or sides of stories that we don't hear a whole lot, and this definitely fits the bill. This one is a nonfiction book called Fallout. It is by Steve Sheinkin. This is what we're going to be using for our nonfiction spine for our Cold War unit. It is written in such a gripping way. It is all about the Cold War, all about spying, but it does not read like a nonfiction. It reads more like a novel without a main character, but it's Really, really good. There is some language in here, which if you're reading aloud, you can skip. All of the language is direct quotes from people in history. So you can decide what you want to do with that. But this one is super good. He also has one called Bomb that I haven't read, which is about making the atomic bomb during World War II. I'm excited to share this with my kids for the Cold War unit. This is another one by Jinnifer A. Nielsen called Lines of Courage. Had this been released in time for me to write the unit, we would have used this as our main book for our World War I unit, but it was interesting being able to read it with the kids after having done the unit because they had some of the background. But just like Ruta Sepeteys' Salt to the Sea, this one is told from multiple different perspectives that all connect and come together in some way. So it's a bunch of different storylines from different sides of the war, different perspectives of World War I, different places, like physical places in the war. So it's a really good overview. A lot really kind of ties you to a lot of things that went on, a lot of things that happened, a lot of thoughts, just a lot of stuff. And the characters are all really well developed. You want to root for them all. It's hard when you're trying to root for two characters that are on two different sides of an issue, but it really gives a lot of opportunity for discussion as well. This one I found on Book Outlet. I had never heard of it before, and I was looking for a fun read, and this one talks about getting the scoop and superheroes, and just seemed like something that was really fun. When I read it, I was floored. It was totally not what I was expecting. So this is about a girl, Nadia, who wants to be a reporter when she grows up. She also loves superheroes, and she sees a boy in her neighborhood, and he broke her paddle to her canoe. He decides she does not like him. He must be a supervillain, and is Paddle Boy. And a situation happens where her dog almost gets drowned. She blames Paddle Boy, and this other boy shows up out of nowhere, saves her dog, and disappears. And she's trying to figure out who this boy is. And this is a really fun read, but it tackles a very heavy topic, and that is human trafficking. So this is, I just love this, and I ended up reading it with my oldest. We read it together for his literature, and it had so many good discussion points that we could talk about, so many things to bring up with. It's written in a very tasteful way for kids, and if you have a child who's interested in investigative journalism, who's interested in superheroes, or anything along those lines, I highly recommend this book. I was not expecting a lot out of this book, honestly. I just wanted something fun to read, but I was blown away. It was so, so good. So this is The Invisible Boy by Alyssa Hollingsworth. We have another Jinnifer A. Nielsen book. Are you surprised? I told you I've been loving her books. This one is called Words on Fire, and it is set during the Russian invasion of Lithuania in the late 1800s. And this is about how the Russian people were trying to make Lithuanian culture just like Russian culture. They were kind of trying to take it over, and one of the ways that they did that was by banning books. But books were because they were in the Lithuanian language, because they had Lithuanian history and stories, and so the main character is someone who transports books illegally to other people, and so we follow her story. It is super intense, super good. Again, another part of history that I didn't really know much about. It has been really interesting looking at history. This one goes all the way back to the late 1800s and seeing the ways that different cultures are oppressed through Nazism or all these other kind of ways that people try and take over these cultures. And it's very, very interesting to learn about all of that. But I really enjoyed this. I read it separately from my son, and he absolutely loved it. He said, "Mom, you've got to read this. You've got to read this." So then I listened to it on audio as well. But this is another one that I highly recommend. Getting really close, you guys. This one is The Very, Very Far North. If you have young listeners and you want a good read aloud, this one is so adorable. It's funny. It reminds me a little bit of Winnie the Pooh kind of style to it, but it's very clever. It's very funny. It's good enough to get your older kids interested in, but just really, really sweet story about the polar bear Dwayne and all of his friends in the very, very far north. There's Cece, there's Handsome, there's a pesky little fox, there's all these little creatures, and this is just such a sweet, sweet read. And I'm pretty sure if you're a Brave Writer fan, for January, this is their book, I think. So definitely one to check out. The last book, ooh, they're falling, is very much an adult book, and it was my last read of 2022. Definitely a 5-star read. Absolutely loved it. I'm still mulling over all of it in my head, but it is called The German Wife by Kelly Rimmer. I listened to this one on audio. This is about 2 people. It's about Lizzie and Sophie, and it jumps back and forth between both of them in the 30s and 40s, and then the modern story is in the 50s. So the 50s is kind of what's happening. And then it kind of jumps back and shows you their story starting in the 30s. With Lizzie, she's from Texas. She lived through the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. Then her brother went off to war. With Sophie, she starts when Hitler first takes power, and her husband is an incredibly smart scientist that the Reich wants as a part of their team, and they grapple with this whole idea of, what do we do? Because this party is not okay. The things they're teaching our children are not okay. But if we say anything, they're going to kill us. They're going to kill our kids. How do we, what do we do in this situation? And Kelly is wrestling with, in the 50s, these Germans that come over to America in Operation Paperclip. And she doesn't want to have anything to do with the Germans. These were Nazis. These were terrible people. And as they both grapple with this in their own ways, it's just so complex, so beautiful, such a great way to look at the characters. And I absolutely loved this story. So those are my 5-star reads from 2022. I'm hoping to share with you guys a little bit of my TBR, which is massive, for next year, and some of my plans and hopes for reading for next year. And if there are any other bookish or homeschool related videos you would like to see in 2023, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know if you've read any of these that you really enjoyed, or if you see any that stick out to you that you want to add to your TBR list for 2023. I'd love to know. I hope you guys have a wonderful new year and that you have a great day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.